Hey y'all, I'm Sarah, and boy do I have a story for you that'll make your jaw drop. Picture this. You're sitting at your sister's engagement party in some fancy country club in Connecticut, wearing a dress you bought at Target while everyone else is dripping in designer clothes, and your own family is treating you like you're some kind of failure. Well, that was me 3 months ago, and let me tell you, what happened next changed everything. I've always been the black sheep of the Morrison family. While my sister Jessica was getting her MBA from Harvard and landing these high-paying corporate jobs, I was what they called wasting my time with my little tech startup. Yeah, that's right, little tech startup. My parents would roll their eyes every time I mentioned my company, and Jessica, she'd just laugh and say, "Sarah's still playing with computers." The thing is, I'd been working on this app for 3 years. It was my baby, my everything. I'd sleep maybe 4 hours a night, lived off ramen and coffee, and poured every cent I had into making it work. But to my family, I was just the 28-year-old disappointment who dropped out of law school to play around with technology. That night at the engagement party, I was sitting at the singles table. Yeah, they actually had a singles table. How humiliating is that? When Jessica's fiancé, Marcus, walked over. Now, Marcus is this hotshot finance guy from Manhattan, drives a Tesla, wears those expensive suits that probably cost more than my rent. The kind of guy my parents absolutely adored because he represented everything they thought success looked like. "Sarah, right?" he said, sliding into the chair next to me. "Jessica's sister? That's me," I replied, trying not to sound as defeated as I felt. The family disappointment. He laughed, but not in a mean way. "I doubt that. Jessica mentioned you have some kind of tech company." I nearly choked on my wine. Jessica had mentioned my company? To him? Yeah. It's just a small app development thing. Nothing fancy." "What kind of app?" Marcus asked, and I swear he seemed genuinely interested. "It's called Stream Sync," I said, waiting for the usual glazed-over look people get when I explain my work. "It helps content creators manage their multiple social media platforms and tracks engagement across different channels." Marcus went completely still, like statue still. The color drained from his face, and he stared at me like I'd just told him I was an alien. "Wait," he said slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. "StreamSync? The StreamSync that just got featured in TechCrunch last month?" My heart started racing. You know about that? Know about it?" Marcus looked like he was about to pass out. "Sarah, do you have any idea how big your company is getting? We've been trying to get a meeting with StreamSync's founder for weeks. My firm wants to discuss investment opportunities." I felt like the world was spinning. "Your firm?" "Goldman Sachs," he said, still staring at me in disbelief. "We think StreamSync could be the next big thing in social media management. We're talking about a company that could be worth millions." The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Here I was, being treated like a failure by my own family, while my sister's fiancé, a guy from one of the most prestigious investment firms in the world, was telling me my little hobby was actually worth millions. "But wait," Marcus continued, his voice getting more excited. "If you're the founder of StreamSync, then that means..." He paused, doing some mental math. "Holy crap, Sarah. You're not just successful, you're about to be incredibly successful." I looked across the room at my family, my parents chatting with other guests about Jessica's brilliant career choices, Jessica herself showing off her engagement ring to anyone who would look. None of them had any idea that the family failure they'd been dismissing for years was sitting on a gold mine. And you know what? I decided right then and there that they were about to find out exactly how wrong they'd been about me. If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel because trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. This is just the beginning of how I went from family disappointment to, well, let's just say the tables are about to turn in a big way. So there I was, still trying to process what Marcus had just told me, when my mom decided to make her grand appearance at our table. You know how some moms have this talent for showing up at the worst possible moments? Yeah, that's my mom, Patricia Morrison, in all her passive-aggressive glory. "Sarah, honey," she said in that tone that wasn't honey at all, "you've been hogging Jessica's fiancé all evening. Don't you think other people would like to talk to him too?" I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment, but before I could even respond, Marcus stood up and did something that literally made my jaw drop. "Actually, Mrs. Morrison," he said, his voice suddenly all businesslike, "I was hoping to discuss something important with Sarah. I had no idea when I met your daughter that she was the founder of one of the most promising tech companies in the country." My mom's fake smile froze on her face. "I'm sorry, what?" "StreamSync," Marcus continued, and I swear he was enjoying this. "Sarah's company. We've been trying to get a meeting with her for weeks. My colleagues are going to be blown away when they find out I'm dating her sister." The silence that followed was so awkward. You could practically hear everyone's thoughts. My mom stood there, opening and closing her mouth like a fish, while other guests started turning their heads toward our conversation. That's impossible," my mom finally stammered. "Sarah's company is just a little hobby. She barely makes enough to pay her rent." And that's when I realized something that hit me like a freight train. My family didn't just think I was unsuccessful. They literally had no idea what I'd been doing for the past 3 years. They'd been so busy dismissing me that they never even bothered to ask about my actual progress. "Mom," I said quietly, "when's the last time you asked me about my company?" She looked flustered. "Well, you never really explained it properly." "I tried," I said, feeling years of frustration bubbling up. "Every family dinner, every phone call, every time I visited. But you and Dad would just change the subject or make jokes about me playing with computers." Marcus was watching this exchange with fascination, probably getting a front-row seat to family drama he never expected. But then he did something that completely shocked me. "Sarah," he said, pulling out his phone, "would you mind if I showed your mom the TechCrunch article?" Before I could answer, he was already pulling up the article on his phone. "Here," he said, handing it to my mom. "This is from last month." I watched my mom's face change as she read the headline. StreamSync, the small startup that's revolutionizing social media management. Her eyes got wider with each line, and by the time she got to the part about projected revenue, she looked like she might faint. "It says here that StreamSync's user base has grown by 300% in the past 6 months," she read out loud, her voice getting smaller, "and that industry experts predict the company could be valued at over $50 million within the next 2 years. "That's actually a conservative estimate," Marcus said casually. "Based on their current growth trajectory, I'd say they're looking at closer to 100 million. I felt like I was in some kind of alternate universe. My mom, who had spent years telling me I needed to get a real job, was standing there holding proof that I'd already built something incredible. "Sarah," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is this real?" "It's real, Mom," I said, and for the first time in years, I felt proud instead of defensive. "I've been trying to tell you guys, but nobody wanted to listen." That's when Jessica appeared, probably wondering why our mom looked like she'd seen a ghost. "What's going on over here?" she asked, that familiar tone of superiority creeping into her voice. "Your sister," Marcus said, turning to his fiancé, "is apparently the founder of StreamSync." Jessica laughed. "Marcus, don't be silly. Sarah's little app thing isn't—" "It's not little," Marcus interrupted, and his voice was firm in a way I'd never heard before. "Jessica, StreamSync is huge, like life-changing huge. Your sister is about to be incredibly wealthy." The look on Jessica's face was priceless. It was like watching someone realize they'd been making fun of a lottery winner for being poor. Her perfect smile cracked, and for the first time in my life, I saw my big sister look genuinely confused. "But she lives in that tiny apartment," Jessica said weakly, "because I've been reinvesting everything back into the company," I explained. "That's what you do when you're building something from the ground up." Marcus nodded approvingly. "Smart move. Most successful entrepreneurs live below their means during the growth phase." I could see the wheels turning in Jessica's head. Her little sister, the one she'd been treating like a failure, was suddenly being praised by her own fiancé, a guy whose opinion she valued more than anyone's. "I don't understand," Jessica said, and for the first time ever, she sounded small. "How did this happen without us knowing?" "Because you never asked," I said simply. "You all decided 3 years ago that I was making a mistake, and you never bothered to check if that was still true." The crowd around us was starting to grow. Other guests were whispering and pointing, and I could see my dad making his way over, probably wondering why his wife looked like she'd seen a ghost. This was it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for my whole life, the moment when my family would finally see me for who I really was. But you know what? It wasn't feeling quite like I thought it would. You know that feeling when you're vindicated but also kind of sad at the same time? Yeah, that was me watching my dad's face as Mom filled him in on what had just happened. Dad's always been the practical one in the family, the guy who taught me to balance a checkbook and told me to follow the money when choosing a career. Seeing him realize that I'd actually been following his advice all along was Complicated. 50 million? Dad repeated, like he couldn't quite wrap his head around the number. Sarah's company is worth $50 million? Potentially more, Marcus said, and I could tell he was enjoying being the bearer of this news. The social media management space is exploding right now, and StreamSync is positioned perfectly to capture a huge market share. Dad looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Sarah, honey, why didn't you tell us? And that's when I lost it. Not in a dramatic, screaming way, more like a tired, frustrated, "Are you kidding me right now?" way. Dad, I tried to tell you, I said, my voice cracking a little. Remember last Christmas when I was explaining how we'd signed our first major client? You literally told me to stop talking shop and asked me to pass the gravy. The silence that followed was deafening. Around us, the engagement party continued, but our little family drama had created this weird bubble where everyone was staring at each other like strangers. And you, Jessica, I continued, turning to my sister, every time I mentioned a milestone or a breakthrough, you'd make some comment about how I needed to focus on reality and find a stable job. Jessica's face was turning red, and not in a good way. Sarah, that's not fair. We were just trying to look out for you. Were you? I asked. Or were you just uncomfortable with the idea that your little sister might actually be good at something? That hit a nerve. Jessica's always been the golden child, the one who did everything right, followed every rule, checked every box. The idea that I might have succeeded by doing the complete opposite of what she'd done was clearly messing with her worldview. This is ridiculous, Jessica said, her voice getting sharp. Even if your company is worth something now, it's not like you're actually rich. You're still living in that apartment, still driving that old Honda. Because I'm not stupid, I shot back. I know the difference between company valuation and personal wealth. I know what it means to bootstrap a business and reinvest profits. But apparently, that's more than you learned in business school. Ouch. Yeah, that was a low blow. But I was done playing nice. Years of being treated like the family screw-up had officially caught up with me. Marcus was watching this whole exchange with the kind of fascination usually reserved for car accidents. Actually, he said, clearly unable to help himself, Sarah's approach is textbook entrepreneurship. Living below your means while scaling is exactly what every successful founder does. Marcus, Jessica said, her voice carrying a warning tone that I'd never heard her use with him before. You don't need to. No, I think I do, Marcus interrupted, and something in his tone made everyone pay attention. Because honestly, Jessica, the way you've been talking about your sister is pretty messed up. Wait, what? Did Jessica's perfect fiancé just call her out in front of everyone? I looked around and realized we'd attracted quite an audience. The whole engagement party had basically turned into a spectator sport. I mean, Marcus continued, here's your sister, who's built something incredible from nothing, and instead of being proud of her, you've been treating her like she's some kind of failure. That's not just wrong, it's actually pretty mean. Jessica's face went from red to pale in about 2 seconds. Marcus, I can't believe you're taking her side. I'm not taking sides, Marcus said firmly. I'm just telling the truth, and the truth is, your sister is probably going to be more successful than both of us combined. The crowd around us was getting bigger, and I could hear people whispering. This was supposed to be Jessica's big night, her moment to shine, and instead, it had turned into the Sarah Morrison vindication tour. You know what? Jessica said, her voice getting loud enough for half the party to hear. Fine. Congratulations, Sarah. You win. You're the successful one. Are you happy now? But here's the thing. I wasn't happy. I was angry, hurt, and honestly a little heartbroken, because this wasn't how I'd imagined it would feel to finally prove my family wrong. I'd always thought it would be triumphant, like some kind of movie moment where everyone realizes their mistake and apologizes. Instead, I just felt sad that it had taken a stranger telling them about my success for them to even listen. Sad that my own sister seemed more upset about being wrong than proud of what I'd accomplished. No, Jessica, I said quietly. I'm not happy. I'm disappointed, because I never wanted to win against you. I just wanted you to believe in me. The party had basically stopped at this point. Everyone was watching our family implode in real time, and I could see my parents looking mortified, not because of how they'd treated me, but because we were making a scene at Jessica's engagement party. Sarah, Mom said, trying to do damage control. Maybe we should discuss this later, privately. Why? I asked. So you can dismiss me again? So you can tell me I'm being dramatic or oversensitive? That's not what Dad started. That's exactly what you do, I interrupted. Every time I've tried to share something important with you, you've found a way to minimize it or change the subject. Well, guess what? You can't minimize this anymore. I looked around at all the faces staring at us. Family friends, business associates, people I'd grown up with who had watched me be treated like the family disappointment for years. And suddenly, I realized something that changed everything. This wasn't my mess to clean up. This was theirs. So there I was, standing in the middle of my sister's engagement party, with half of Connecticut's social elite watching my family have a complete meltdown. And you know what I realized? I was done apologizing for their behavior. Actually, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, I think we should discuss this right now, because I'm tired of pretending that the way you've treated me is okay. My mom looked horrified. Sarah, please, not here. Why not here? I asked. Are you embarrassed? Because I've been embarrassed for years. Embarrassed every time someone asked about my career and you'd make jokes about me playing with computers. Embarrassed when you'd introduce Jessica as your successful daughter and me as the one who's still figuring things out. The crowd was eating this up. I could see people nudging each other, whispering, pulling out their phones. This was going to be all over Facebook by morning. Sarah, that's enough, Dad said, using his stern voice that used to make me back down when I was a kid. But I wasn't a kid anymore. I was a successful entrepreneur who'd built something from nothing, and I was done being talked down to. No, Dad, it's not enough, I said. Do you want to know what enough looks like? Enough is when you called me last month to ask if I needed money for rent, like I was some kind of charity case. Meanwhile, my company had just closed a deal that brought in more revenue than you make in a year. Dad's face went white. Sarah, I was just trying to help. You were trying to help by assuming I was failing, I said. You never asked how business was going. You never asked if I needed advice or support. You just assumed I was broke and offered me a handout. Marcus was still standing there, looking like he was watching the most interesting tennis match of his life. For what it's worth, he said. Most successful entrepreneurs I know have had similar experiences with their families. It's actually pretty common. Marcus, Jessica hissed. Stop helping. I'm not helping, Marcus said, and his voice was getting cooler. I'm just observing, and what I'm observing is that your family has been treating your sister pretty badly. That's when Uncle Bob decided to join the conversation. Uncle Bob is Dad's brother, and he's always been the family loudmouth, the guy who says what everyone else is thinking but with zero filter. Well, I'll be damned, Uncle Bob said, pushing through the crowd. Little Sarah's a big shot now? Hell, I always knew she had it in her. Everyone turned to stare at him. You did? I asked. Course I did, Uncle Bob said, grinning. You were the only one in this family with any real guts. While everyone else was playing it safe, you were out there taking risks. That takes balls. Bob, Mom said sharply. Language. Oh, shove it, Patricia, Uncle Bob said, and I nearly choked on my own spit. Nobody talks to my mom like that. You've been giving this kid hell for 3 years, and now you're worried about language? The crowd was loving this. I could see people recording on their phones, and I realized that this whole disaster was about to become viral content. You know what I think? Uncle Bob continued, clearly on a roll. I think you're all jealous. Here's Sarah, building something from scratch, being creative, taking chances. And what are the rest of you doing? Playing it safe, following rules, being boring. That's not true, Jessica said, but her voice sounded weak. Isn't it? Uncle Bob asked. When's the last time any of you took a real risk? When's the last time you tried something new? Hell, when's the last time you were excited about anything? I looked around at my family, my parents, who'd spent their whole lives climbing the corporate ladder and playing by every rule. Jessica, who'd followed the exact path everyone expected her to follow. And then there was me, the one who'd said screw it and built something completely on my own. You know what the real problem is? I said, feeling clarity wash over me. You're not upset that I failed. You're upset that I succeeded without following your rules. That hit home. I could see it in their faces. The recognition that I'd just put my finger on something they didn't want to admit. That's ridiculous, Mom said, but she couldn't look me in the eye. Is it? I asked. Because I remember the exact moment you stopped believing in me. It was when I told you I was dropping out of law school. You said I was throwing my life away, that I'd never amount to anything without a degree. Sarah, you were just wrong, I interrupted. And instead of admitting that, you doubled down. You kept treating me like a failure even when the evidence was right in front of you. Marcus cleared his throat. Actually, Some of the most successful entrepreneurs I know are college dropouts. Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg. Marcus, Jessica said, her voice dangerously quiet. I'm getting really tired of you defending my sister. And I'm getting really tired of you attacking her, Marcus shot back. What's your problem, Jessica? Why can't you just be happy for her? The question hung in the air like smoke. Everyone was staring at Jessica, waiting for her answer. And for the first time in my life, I saw my perfect sister look genuinely vulnerable. Because, Jessica said, her voice cracking, she was supposed to be the screw-up. She was supposed to be the one who needed help, who needed us to fix her problems. And if she doesn't need us, then what does that make me? And there it was, the truth that nobody wanted to say out loud. Jessica's entire identity was built on being the successful one, the responsible one, the one who had it all figured out. My success wasn't just proving her wrong, it was threatening everything she thought she knew about herself. Jessica, I said softly, I never wanted to compete with you. I just wanted to be myself. Well, congratulations, Jessica said, tears starting to form in her eyes. You win. You're officially the successful Morrison sister. But as I watched my sister fall apart in front of everyone, I realized something that changed everything. This wasn't about winning or losing. This was about a family that had forgotten how to support each other. Looking at Jessica cry in front of all these people, I felt something I wasn't expecting. Guilt. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but because I could see how much pain she was in. And despite everything, she was still my sister. Jess, I said quietly, this isn't about winning or losing, isn't it? She asked, mascara starting to run down her cheeks. Because it sure feels like I just lost everything I thought I knew about my family. The crowd around us was getting uncomfortable. This had gone from entertaining drama to genuinely sad, and people were starting to back away, giving us space. But they were still watching, still recording, still turning our family crisis into social media content. You know what? I said, looking around at all the faces staring at us. Everyone needs to stop recording and give us some privacy. This is a family matter. Sarah's right, Marcus said, and I was grateful he was finally trying to help, instead of just stirring the pot. Could everyone please put their phones away and give us some space? Slowly, reluctantly, people started to back off, but the damage was done. Half the party had witnessed our family imploding, and I knew by tomorrow morning, this whole thing would be the talk of our social circle. Mom, Dad, I said, we need to talk, all of us, but not here. Sarah, Mom said, her voice shaky. I don't know what to say. How about I'm sorry, I suggested. How about I'm proud of you? How about I should have listened? Dad stepped forward, and for the first time all night, he looked like the father I remembered from childhood, the one who used to help me with math homework and tell me I could do anything I set my mind to. Sarah, he said, I am sorry. We are sorry. We got so caught up in our own ideas about what success should look like that we stopped seeing what you were actually accomplishing. It was a start, but it wasn't enough. Years of dismissal and condescension can't be fixed with one apology. Dad, do you remember when I was 10 and I told you I wanted to start a business? I asked. He nodded. You wanted to sell painted rocks door to door. And what did you tell me? I told you that entrepreneurs were the backbone of America, he said quietly. I told you that starting a business was one of the most courageous things a person could do. So what changed? I asked. When did I go from being courageous to being irresponsible? Dad looked down at his hands. When you dropped out of law school. When you chose a path that seemed uncertain. I guess I got scared. Scared of what? Scared that you'd fail. Scared that you'd struggle. Scared that I hadn't prepared you for the real world. And there it was, the truth behind all the criticism and doubt. My parents weren't trying to hurt me. They were trying to protect me from failure, even if it meant protecting me from success too. But Dad, I said, I did fail. A lot. My first 2 app ideas were disasters. I maxed out my credit cards, ate ramen for months, almost got evicted twice. But I kept going because I believed in what I was building. And we should have supported you through that, Mom said, tears in her eyes. We should have been there for you when you were struggling, not making it worse by acting like you were making a mistake. Jessica was still standing there, looking lost and confused. I don't understand, she said. If you were struggling so much, why didn't you ask for help? Because every time I tried to talk to you about my problems, you'd just tell me to give up and get a real job, I said. You made it clear that you thought what I was doing was stupid. I thought I was being practical, Jessica said weakly. You were being judgmental, I replied. There's a difference. Marcus was watching this whole exchange with a look I couldn't quite read. Finally, he spoke up. Jessica, can I ask you something? What? She said, wiping at her eyes. When's the last time you asked Sarah about her company? Like, really asked. Not just making conversation, but actually wanting to know how things were going? Jessica was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. I don't think I ever have. But you've been dating me for 2 years, Marcus said. And in that time, you've never once mentioned that your sister runs a tech company that's gaining national attention? I didn't know it was gaining national attention, Jessica said defensively. Because you never asked, Marcus said simply. You just assumed it was small and unimportant. I could see the realization dawning on Jessica's face. She'd been so convinced that I was failing that she'd stopped paying attention to what I was actually doing. Sarah, she said quietly, I'm sorry. I really am. I let my own insecurities get in the way of being a good sister. What insecurities? I asked. Jessica laughed bitterly. Are you kidding? You think it's easy being the perfect daughter? You think I don't know that everyone expects me to have it all figured out? When you dropped out of law school to start your own business, I was terrified. Terrified of what? Terrified that you'd succeed, she admitted. Because if you could be happy and successful without following all the rules I'd followed, then what did that say about my choices? And suddenly, I understood. Jessica wasn't just the golden child. She was the cautious child, the one who'd chosen security over adventure, conformity over creativity. My success wasn't just proving her wrong about me. It was making her question everything she'd built her life on. Jess, I said gently, my success doesn't diminish yours. We don't have to be in competition, don't we? She asked. Because it sure feels like we always have been. And that's when I realized the real problem. Our family had created a dynamic where there could only be one successful daughter, one child who had it all figured out. We'd been pitted against each other from the beginning, and neither of us had questioned it until now. Maybe, I said, it's time we stopped competing and started supporting each other. Jessica looked at me with something that might have been hope. Do you think we can do that? I think we have to try, I said. Because this family is broken, and we're the only ones who can fix it. The engagement party was basically over at this point. Most of the guests had either left or were standing around in small groups, probably gossiping about the Morrison family drama they'd just witnessed. But you know what? I didn't care anymore. For the first time in years, my family was actually talking to each other, honestly. So what do we do now? Jessica asked, and she looked genuinely lost. How do we fix this? We start by being honest, I said. All of us. No more pretending, no more assumptions, no more trying to protect each other from the truth. Marcus had been quiet for a while, but now he stepped forward. Jessica, I need to say something, and you're not going to like it. What now? Jessica asked, and I could hear the exhaustion in her voice. I've been thinking about this whole situation, and I'm realizing that the way you've talked about your sister over the past 2 years has really bothered me, Marcus said. I thought it was just sibling rivalry, but now I see it was something worse. Marcus, please, Jessica said. Not now. Yes, now, Marcus said firmly, because I need you to understand something. The way you've been treating Sarah isn't just mean. It's a deal breaker for me. The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica stared at Marcus like he'd just slapped her. What are you saying? She asked. I'm saying that I can't marry someone who treats their family the way you've been treating Sarah, Marcus said. I've been watching you dismiss her, belittle her, make fun of her dreams, and I kept telling myself it was just sister stuff. But it's not. It's cruel. Marcus, Jessica said, her voice breaking. You can't be serious. I am serious, Marcus said. Look, I love you, Jessica, but I don't respect the way you've been acting toward your sister, and I can't build a life with someone I don't respect. I felt like I was watching a train wreck in slow motion. This wasn't what I'd wanted. I'd wanted my family to acknowledge my success, not for my sister's engagement to fall apart. Marcus, I said, this is between Jessica and me. Don't make decisions about your relationship based on our family drama. It's not just about family drama, Sarah, Marcus said. It's about character. It's about how someone treats people when they think those people don't matter. I never thought Sarah didn't matter, Jessica protested. Didn't you? Marcus asked. Because your actions sure said otherwise. Jessica looked around at all of us. Her parents, her sister, her fiancé, and I could see the moment she realized that everything she'd built her life on was crumbling. So what? You're breaking up with me, she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm asking you to take a long, hard look at yourself and decide who you want to be, Marcus said. Because the person you've been isn't someone I can spend my life with. But I can change, Jessica said desperately. I can be better. Can you? Marcus asked. Because this isn't just about Sarah. This is about a pattern. You do this thing where you decide someone isn't important enough to pay attention to, and then you treat them accordingly. That's not true, Jessica said, but her voice lacked conviction. What about your assistant at work? Marcus asked. The one you always complain about? Or the waitress at that restaurant you like? Or the guy who does your dry cleaning? Jessica's face went pale. Those are different situations. Are they? Marcus asked. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you have a problem with treating people like they're beneath you. I watched my sister's face crumble as she realized that Marcus was right. This wasn't just about me. This was about a fundamental character flaw that had been affecting all her relationships. I don't know how to be different, Jessica said, and for the first time, she sounded like the scared little girl I remembered from childhood. Maybe, I said carefully, you start by apologizing, not just to me, but to everyone you've dismissed or belittled. And then what? Jessica asked. Then you work on changing, Dad said, speaking up for the first time in a while. Because Marcus is right. The way you've been treating people isn't okay. Dad, Jessica said, looking betrayed. I thought you were on my side. I'm on everyone's side, Dad said. But that doesn't mean I'm going to pretend your behavior is acceptable. This is unbelievable, Jessica said, looking around at all of us. My whole family is ganging up on me. No, Mom said quietly. We're finally telling you the truth. And the truth is that you've been acting like a bully. The word bully hung in the air like a slap. Jessica recoiled like she'd been physically hit. I'm not a bully, she said, but her voice was shaky. Jessica, I said gently, do you remember my college graduation? What about it? You told everyone at the party that I was probably going to end up living in your basement someday, I said. You thought it was funny. Everyone laughed. Jessica's face crumpled. Sarah, I was just joking. Were you? I asked. Because it didn't feel like a joke to me. It felt like you were telling everyone that you thought I was pathetic. I didn't mean it like that, Jessica said weakly. But that's how it came across, Marcus said. And that's the problem, Jessica. You say these things that sound like jokes, but they're really just mean. I could see the exact moment when Jessica finally understood what we were all telling her. Her whole body seemed to deflate, and she sank down into one of the nearby chairs. Oh my God, she whispered. I really am a bully, aren't I? You can be, I said honestly. But that doesn't mean you can't change. How? Jessica asked, looking up at me with tears in her eyes. How do I fix this? How do I become a better person? You start by owning your mistakes, I said. Really owning them. Not making excuses or trying to justify them. Okay, Jessica said, taking a deep breath. I've been a terrible sister. I've been mean, dismissive, and cruel. I've treated you like you didn't matter, and I've made you feel small and insignificant. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It was the first genuine apology I'd ever heard from Jessica, and it hit me harder than I expected. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. Thank you, I said. That means more than you know. What about us? Jessica asked, looking at Marcus. Can we fix this? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, he said finally. This isn't something that can be fixed overnight, Jessica. This is going to take real work, real change. And I need to see that change before I can trust you again. So what does that mean for our engagement? Jessica asked. It means we postpone the wedding, Marcus said. It means you take some time to work on yourself. And it means we see if the person you become is someone I can build a life with. Jessica nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. And Sarah, Marcus said, turning to me, I owe you an apology too. For what? For not speaking up sooner, he said. I've been watching Jessica treat you badly for 2 years, and I should have said something. I should have defended you. You were trying to stay out of family drama, I said. I get it. That's not an excuse, Marcus said. And I'm sorry. We all stood there for a moment, processing everything that had just happened. The engagement party that was supposed to celebrate Jessica and Marcus was ending with their relationship in limbo, and our family finally facing some hard truths. So where do we go from here? Dad asked. We start over, I said. We learn how to be a real family. We support each other instead of competing with each other. Can we do that? Mom asked. After everything that's happened? I think we have to try, I said. Because the alternative is losing each other completely. Jessica looked up at me from her chair. Sarah, do you think you can forgive me? I'm willing to try, I said. But forgiveness isn't something that just happens. It's something you earn. Then I'll earn it, Jessica said with more conviction than I'd heard from her all night. I'll do whatever it takes. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my newly renovated office. Yeah, I finally upgraded from my tiny apartment workspace when Jessica knocked on my door. It was the first time she'd ever visited my company, and I could see her taking in everything: the modern furniture, the team of developers working at their stations, the wall of awards and press clippings. Wow, she said quietly. This is really impressive, Sarah. Thanks, I said, gesturing for her to sit down. What brings you by? I wanted to update you on things, Jessica said, and I wanted to ask for your help with something. Over the past 3 weeks, Jessica had been working with a therapist to understand her patterns of behavior. She'd also been making amends with people she'd hurt: her assistant, service workers, even some of our old college friends. How's therapy going? I asked. Hard, Jessica admitted. Really hard. Dr. Chen is making me look at some stuff about myself that I've been avoiding for years. Like what? Like the fact that I've been using other people's failures to make myself feel better about my own insecurities, Jessica said. She calls it comparative validation. I built my self-worth on being better than other people instead of just being good at what I do. I had to admit, I was impressed. The old Jessica would never have been this self-aware or vulnerable. What about Marcus? I asked. Jessica's face fell a little. He's still staying at his brother's place. We talk every few days, but he's made it clear that he needs to see real change before he'll consider moving back in. How do you feel about that? Honestly, I think he's right, Jessica said. I wouldn't want to marry the person I was 3 weeks ago either. That was probably the most mature thing I'd ever heard Jessica say. So what did you want my help with? I asked. Jessica took a deep breath. I want to understand your business. Really understand it. Not so I can compete with you or anything like that, but because I want to know my sister. I want to understand what you've built and why it matters to you. I stared at her for a moment, trying to figure out if this was genuine or just another attempt to make herself look good. Why? I asked. Because for the past 3 years I've been dismissing something that's clearly the most important thing in your life, Jessica said. And if I want to be a good sister, I need to understand what drives you. So I spent the next 2 hours explaining StreamSync to Jessica. I showed her the platform, walked her through our client testimonials, explained our growth strategy, and told her about the challenges we'd overcome. And for the first time in my adult life, Jessica listened. Really listened. This is incredible, Sarah, she said when I finished. I had no idea how complex this all was, or how much work you'd put into it. It's been my life for 3 years, I said. And I completely ignored it, Jessica said, shaking her head. God, I was such an ass. Yeah, you were, I agreed. But you're trying to change now. That counts for something. Can I ask you something? Jessica said. Sure. Are you happy? Like really happy? I thought about it for a moment. Yeah, I am. Even with all the stress and uncertainty, even with the long hours and the financial pressure, I love what I do. I love building something from nothing. I love solving problems and creating value for people. I don't think I've ever felt that way about my job, Jessica admitted. What do you mean? I mean, I'm good at what I do and it pays well, but I don't love it, Jessica said. I chose finance because it was prestigious and stable, not because I was passionate about it. So why don't you change? I asked. Because I'm scared, Jessica said simply. I'm scared that if I take risks like you did, I'll fail. And I don't know how to handle failure. Jess, you know what the difference is between you and me? I asked. What? I learned how to fail early, I said. I failed at so many things that it stopped being scary. But you've spent your whole life avoiding failure. So the idea of it terrifies you. How do I get over that? You start small, I said. You take little risks, make little mistakes, learn from them. You build up your tolerance for uncertainty. Would you help me? Jessica asked. I mean, would you be willing to mentor me or something? Help me figure out how to be more like you? I was quiet for a moment, processing what she was asking. 6 months ago, if someone had told me that Jessica would be sitting in my office asking for my help, I would have laughed. I'll help you, I said finally, but on one condition. What? You have to promise me that this isn't about competing with me or trying to prove something to Marcus, I said. This has to be about you figuring out who you want to be. I promise, Jessica said. This is about me. For the first time in my life, this is actually about me. A week later, Jessica called me with news that shocked everyone. I quit my job, she said. You what? I quit my job, Jessica repeated. I gave my 2 weeks notice yesterday. Jessica, what are you going to do? I don't know yet, she said, and I could hear the excitement in her voice. Isn't that crazy? For the first time in my adult life, I don't have a plan, and it's terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. What did Marcus say? He said he was proud of me, Jessica said, and I could hear her smiling. He said it was the bravest thing I'd ever done. Are you guys getting back together? We're taking it slow, Jessica said. But yeah, I think we're going to be okay. He says I'm becoming someone he recognizes, someone he fell in love with before I got so caught up in being perfect all the time. I'm proud of you too, Jess, I said. This is huge. Sarah, can I tell you something? Of course. For the first time in my life, I understand why you dropped out of law school, Jessica said. Because sometimes the path everyone expects you to take isn't the path that's right for you. Yeah, I said. Sometimes you have to disappoint people in order to become who you're supposed to be. I love you, little sister, Jessica said. I love you too, big sister, I replied. And for the first time in years, I really meant it. 6 months after the engagement party that changed everything, I was standing in front of 200 people at the Connecticut Tech Summit, about to give a keynote speech about entrepreneurship and family dynamics. Yeah, that's right. The girl who used to be treated like the family failure was now being asked to speak at major industry events. But the best part? My whole family was sitting in the front row. Good morning, everyone, I began, looking out at the crowd. My name is Sarah Morrison, and I'm the founder and CEO of StreamSync. But before I tell you about building a successful company, I want to tell you about failing at being the daughter my parents wanted me to be. I caught my parents' eyes and saw them smile. We'd come a long way since that night 6 months ago. You see, for most of my life, I was what my family considered the problem child, I continued. I was the one who couldn't follow the rules, couldn't stick to the plan, couldn't just do what was expected of me. And for a long time, I thought that meant I was broken. I told the audience about dropping out of law school, about the years of family dinners where my achievements were dismissed, about feeling like I had to choose between my dreams and my family's approval. But here's what I learned, I said. Sometimes the people who love you most are the least equipped to understand your vision. And that's not because they don't care about you. It's because they care so much that they're terrified of watching you fail. I could see people in the audience nodding, relating to the story. Apparently, my experience wasn't as unique as I'd thought. The turning point for my family came when we finally had an honest conversation about fear, I continued. My parents were afraid I'd fail and get hurt. I was afraid they'd never accept who I really was. And my sister was afraid that my success would somehow diminish her own. I paused and looked at Jessica, who was sitting next to Marcus. They were engaged again, for real this time, with a wedding planned for next spring. But more importantly, Jessica had found her own path. After leaving her finance job, she'd started a nonprofit that helped women transition out of corporate careers and into entrepreneurship. It was still small, but it was hers, and she loved it. But here's the thing about fear, I said to the audience. It's only useful if it motivates you to prepare better, work harder, or think more creatively. When fear starts making your decisions for you, that's when it becomes a problem. I wrapped up my speech by talking about the importance of having people in your life who believe in your vision, even when they don't understand it. I talked about the difference between supportive skepticism and destructive criticism. And I talked about how sometimes the biggest favor you can do for someone you love is to let them fail on their own terms. The audience gave me a standing ovation, but the only reaction I really cared about was my family's. When I stepped off the stage, my dad was the first person to reach me. Sarah, he said, pulling me into a hug. That was incredible. I'm so proud of you. Thanks, Dad, I said. That means everything to me. You know, he said, I've been thinking about what you said up there, about fear making decisions for us. I think I spent so many years being afraid that I'd failed as a father if you didn't succeed, that I forgot to just trust that I'd raised a smart, capable daughter. You did raise a smart, capable daughter, I said. It just took me a while to figure out how to use those skills. Mom joined our hug, tears in her eyes. Sarah, honey, I owe you an apology that's 6 months overdue. Mom, you already apologized. No, she said firmly. I apologized for not supporting you. But I never apologized for not being curious about you, for not asking questions about your dreams and goals and fears. I failed at one of the most basic parts of being a mother, really knowing my child. You know me now, I said. That's what matters. Jessica appeared at my side, grinning. Nice speech, sis. Very inspirational. Very look how far we've all come. Shut up, I said, laughing. You're just jealous because they didn't ask you to be a keynote speaker. Actually, Jessica said, they did ask me to speak at next year's summit about career transitions and taking risks later in life. Jessica, that's amazing, I said, and I meant it. A year ago, I would have felt competitive or threatened. Now I just felt proud of my sister. Yeah, well, I learned from the best, Jessica said, bumping my shoulder with hers. Marcus joined our little family huddle, shaking hands with my parents and giving me a hug. Great speech, Sarah, he said. You know, I've been thinking about something. What's that? 6 months ago, I was trying to get a meeting with the founder of StreamSync for investment purposes, Marcus said. And now that founder is going to be my sister-in-law. Weird how life works out, isn't it? I said. It is, Marcus agreed. But I have to ask, are you ever going to be interested in outside investment? Because I still think StreamSync could be huge. I thought about it for a moment. 6 months ago, I would have said no immediately. I was so used to doing everything myself, so used to not trusting other people's judgment about my business. Maybe, I said. Let me think about it. Take your time, Marcus said. Family first, business second. As we walked out of the conference center together, I reflected on how much had changed. StreamSync was now valued at over $80 million, with offices in 3 cities and a team of 50 employees. I'd been featured on the cover of Entrepreneur magazine and invited to speak at tech conferences around the country. But the success that meant the most to me wasn't the financial success or the professional recognition. It was this, walking out of a building with my family, all of us genuinely happy to be together, all of us proud of what we'd each accomplished. Hey, Jessica said as we reached the parking lot. Want to grab dinner? All of us? That sounds perfect, I said. And as we drove to the restaurant, my parents in their car, Jessica and Marcus in theirs, and me in my finally upgraded Honda. Okay, it was a Tesla now, but I'd earned it. I thought about the girl who used to sit at family dinners feeling like an outsider. She would never have believed that someday she'd be the one bringing the family together. Sometimes the biggest risk you can take is being exactly who you're supposed to be. And sometimes, if you're really lucky, the people who love you will learn to love that person too. Thanks for sticking with me through this crazy story, y'all. If you enjoyed hearing about how I went from family disappointment to tech entrepreneur, please hit that like button and let me know in the comments what family dynamics you've had to overcome in your own life. And don't forget to subscribe, because I've got plenty more stories about building a business, dealing with family drama, and learning to believe in yourself when nobody else does. Until next time, remember, your family's definition of success doesn't have to be yours. Sometimes the best thing you can do is prove them wrong by proving yourself right.